welcome to Fire Headlines, where we discuss the hottest topics in fire service news. I'm your host, Samantha Didion, and joining me on the panel today is Chief Ken Kehmna. Our topic this week is arson. According to an article from the Daily Dispatch, Kansas is among the top states in the nation for arson incidences. In fact, Kansas accounts for about 6% of the national total. Ken, can you tell us about your experience with arson-related incidences? Are there more now than when you first began your career?
I tell you what is different today from when I started. More and probably the most significant thing is just our ability to gather the necessary information to track those trends. When I started in my fire service career, like a lot of our listeners, all of our documentation was done hard copy. They were, carbon copy pages that we would fill out and submit in packets at the end of the month. Our ability to gather information today on anything is so vastly improved that I think we would always want to look at the numbers today in comparison to the historical past with a little bit of understanding that we're collecting data much better today. I think the value of that is we can be much more accurate and much more diligent in making sure that we're accounting for all of these things. The importance of this kind of data is it really can't be understated. And I think we'll come back to this point quite a bit. I'll make this point quite a bit because having worked for an organization, ultimately leading an organization, I recognize the value of the information that you can derive from the data, how it can help you make informed decisions, and more specifically, how it can help you argue on behalf of your organization for the resources that you need, based upon whatever hazard it is or threat you face. Arson specifically is a crime, and so it's a crime statistic. And crime statistics can be a very nuanced thing that can be very difficult to understand. So I don't know that I could blanket say, yes, there's more today than there was in the past, but I would definitely say that our ability to have greater clarity with regard to what is happening today is definitely there.
Share with our listeners how your department would approach these kinds of incidences. And did that evolve throughout your time in the fire service?
Without question. We talk about the fire service as though there's been no evolution, no progress, no growth. And I think it's funny to say, all this tradition and with no progress. We've made amazing progress in so many areas. I think we just like to say that we haven't, but we really have. And when it comes to our ability to do fire investigation, one, the science is improved. That, first and foremost, the equipment that we have and the tools that we have to actually do a quality investigation have improved significantly over the course of my career. Our ability to understand the role and relationship between cause and origin investigation and arson investigation has also grown significantly. It's given us the opportunity to focus less on having an individual or a small staff with that as their responsibility, and really work with our entire organization to understand their role in determining cause and origin. Oftentimes it's our first in company officers who are doing those investigations, and it's important for them to capture what they see, what it looked like when they arrived. All those things are absolutely critical to determining cause and origin. So, how you structure a program within your organization, obviously it's designed to meet, the organization's need and whatever the community is currently facing. How we've evolved over time to make sure that we have the appropriate staff to do that, whether it's full-time paid investigators and or trained cadre online, has varied. And I would say that we evolved significantly over the time in my career and the organizations that I worked for sure.
So with this evolution, what are some of the challenges that you do still see when it comes to these incidences?
Well, fire investigation is challenging. If for no other reason, the crime of arson is typically done to cover up another crime. It's not simply to destroy property, it's to cover up another crime. Although we do know that arson is a leading cause of vehicle fire, for any number of reasons. Um, but it's often done to cover up another crime, and and obviously the destruction that takes place can make evidence collection very, very challenging. So it takes a considerable amount of effort to do the kind of work we need to do to find the point of origin, to determine whether or not flammable liquids or some other type of incendiary device was used to start that fire, or a timing device if that was in fact used. So it's a complex and complicated process, and oftentimes we get down to the point of origin, and it's like it becomes undetermined. Not that we're not very sophisticated and very well trained, but sometimes there just simply isn't the ability to make a determination as to whether or not it was arson or not. We have had the good fortune, and I've had the great fortune over the course of my career to work with some professionals who actually had canines. And I can tell you, even if you're not a dog lover, it's pretty hard not to be a dog lover when that canine walks into the office. It's a fantastic thing to watch them work and do the work that they do. Ours were always flammable liquids or bomb detection canines. They were of that type. And watching them do their work was amazing and a fundamental game changer from an investigatory standpoint.
That is a really fun aspect that your department got to utilize. Just out of pure curiosity, did the handlers like have the dogs since they were puppies?
So if memory serves, at least one of the two canines we was had flunked out of being a seeing eye canine
Yeah.
for the visually impaired. Absolutely brilliant canine for arson detection, and did an amazing job. And they did. They had those. They had both those canines from the time they were very, very young. It becomes their dog. It is their dog in every sense of the word. It's so amazing because that handler that is the person. That is where the sun rises and sets. That's it. That's everything. At least one of our canines was actually a federal canine through the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which meant that canine flew all over the country doing the work that they did. So not only were we the beneficiary in my own organization, but the canine and the handler flew all over the country assisting in investigations.
Yeah, that is so cool. This is not where I thought our topic would go today, but I'm very happy that it did.
Well, anytime you can talk about dogs, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a huge dog lover. Okay, getting back on track here. Before we started recording, you were telling me a little bit about the programs that your department would have. Can you share that with our listeners?
Yeah, so the organization that I worked for, sort of think of it in two categories. Our arson division. And the arson division was primarily occupied by law enforcement professionals. They were trained peace officers. They came out of the law enforcement community, and they came into the organization, and their role was to oversee and run the arson division and do the investigation. They provided oversight for a number of other shift investigators, trained professionals from the fire service side, who did cause and origin investigations. So they would determine, where the fire started and generally what the cause was. But if they thought it was arson, they would move that up to the arson investigator, who would potentially take over that investigation. So there's certainly the investigatory piece to determine, where did the fire start and what started it. Then you move into the arson piece where you do that investigation, and that's a criminal investigation. So it's a much more involved, longer term investigation. Evidence is collected, working with the court system to make sure that you're getting, if you do need to do any additional searches and all kinds of stuff. So it becomes much more complicated. So there's that side of it. The other piece of the program, which I think is so important, is the public education piece, the community education piece. Our community education division basically did everything from a community education standpoint, but one of the programs they oversaw was our juvenile fire sitter program. And I don't know if it's still called that today, but it was the juvenile fire sitter program. And it was really in cooperation with our local juvenile court system. And it was designed to take young kids, obviously before they were adults, who had gotten themselves into some trouble and may or may not have been involved in an arson case of some kind, and basically keep them out of the system through education and working with them to try and determine what the issue was. Oftentimes, when juveniles find themselves in that position, they're doing it as lashing out for some other reason, whether it's at an educational facility or in their home. And so they would work with these young kids to keep them out of jail, get them into the program, and get them educated. What I think is so great about that is you're really focusing your energy on the right end of the program, because by the time you've had the arson fire, the damage has happened, the destruction has happened, potentially somebody's been injured or lost their life. That's the other end. So being able to get in at the front end and do the education is critical, trying to prevent the problem before it reoccurs or even happens. The cooperation between those two is absolutely critical. When you see it working, it's really quite satisfying. So yeah, that's the kind of program that I've been exposed to the vast majority of my career, and I can tell you I've absolutely seen it work.
Can you give our fire service leaders some tips on maybe how to get this started if they don't already have one in place?
Your public education, your public education folks will work most closely with your local educators and your juvenile court system. It is through your community education division that I would turn. They should take the lead on this role. They are in tune with the local educational community and educational leaders in your community. That is the resource. I think we fail to recognize sometimes the value that our education system plays in just general oversight and general access. Our teachers and our school administrators are instrumental in helping us manage and maintain our communities and educate our communities. They are an excellent throughput to making sure that we're tying our youth in with the resources that they need to make good decisions. So I would start with my community education division and our school educators.
So to kind of wrap up today's conversation, what are some key takeaways and advice for fire service leaders on combating arson?
I think probably first and foremost, and I mentioned that I was going to come back to this. There's actually really two things that I want to make sure to remind everybody of. I talk about public education and community education a lot. I think that I have felt that way for some time. The value of being open and honest and communicative with the community that you serve plays a huge role. I think today the expectation that our communities have about the information that they get from us as public servants is even higher, because now they have access to more information via the internet and everything else. So it's an expectation that we're providing that information. So I would say invest in your community education program. Invest in the information that you provide to your community about the community that they live in and what they can do to assist you in doing your job better. That's first and foremost. The second thing has to do with information. And we talked a little bit about the data and our ability to use that data to see trends and make decisions. Every decision I made as the fire chief needed to be backed up in some way with information that said, this is the right thing to do for the organization. Here's the reason why. Maybe back in the day, I could have gotten in front of the board of supervisors in my uniform and they were just like, sure, whatever you need, chief, go do your thing. We're fine with it. That is not the way things are today. We need to demonstrate that we are providing good oversight to our organizations. And we need to make sure that the things that we're advocating for on behalf of our community to make them safer, whether it's new equipment or additional personnel or new stations, whatever the case may be, that we can justify it. Gathering the necessary information through our fire reports and making sure that we're accurate about what was an accidental fire versus what was an arson fire versus what wasn't a fire at all, that information becomes absolutely critical. I can't tell you how many times coming back from a scene as a company officer, You're just trying to get through the report, just trying to get the report done. Check the box, to try and get through it. That only ends up hurting you in the long run if you don't do a good detailed report and actually capture that information, because you're saying it didn't happen if you don't document it correctly. Make sure we document it correctly. If people are setting fire to dumpsters in your town, that's a property crime. That dumpster belongs to somebody. It's got a value. If the people are setting fire to cars or whatever the case may be, gathering that information is absolutely critical. And that way we can make sure that we're focusing our energies, our resources, our personnel toward the problem that we actually have. So those are the two things that I would say are absolutely critical.
Awesome. Thank you, Ken, for that little bit of advice. And thank you for joining us on today's episode. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and follow us on social media. We'll see you back here next week for more Fire Headlines.